Medical dramas are generally one of those constants that you need in your everyday life. It began with Grey's Anatomy in the 2000s, then House took over, and now it feels like New Amsterdam might be the talk of the town. Its fourth season will conclude by the end of this month, and it's fair to say that people have a lot to say about it. Let's dive into New Amsterdam plot holes that make no sense. For a show that started on the front foot and quickly became a favorite for so many, New Amsterdam has been rather underwhelming in the last couple of seasons. It had so much promise, and then suddenly they decided to hand the reins of the show to some Wattpad writer. We're sorry, but come on, that's an understatement. There are some major discrepancies in the show. The continuity issues are so annoying, and it just feels disjointed and generally just bad. Excess of anything is bad. First of all, we want to assert that we have no issues with inclusion of any kind. We love that they include a person with dwarfism as a character, and the show in general was just so uplifting and entertaining in the beginning. However, the way they've just binned the medical cases for Max's Save the World heroics, it had so much promise. There are too many liberal lessons. Inclusiveness is important, and it's great to see that it's being made a part of Hollywood, but it shouldn't be forced. It should feel natural. Otherwise, funnily enough, it defeats the purpose and just makes the writers look foolish. Please do highlight the social issues. It's important, and we need that. But the genre of the show is literally medical drama. Stick to the script at least. We're not sure if they're under some sort of pressure to become more woke, but whatever the reasons are, they can't justify this switch to a political drama. It doesn't feel relevant at times. You don't want forced lessons about politics. It would be better if they could find a way to bed these issues in. Shoving them down the audience's throats is hardly a good idea, and certainly doesn't send the right kind of message. Next, Max is a weird character. We're willing to overlook that Max does not come across as an incredible actor. The character arc has been hilarious to say the least. It feels more like an attempt at a satirical SNL skit rather than a TV show at this point. To be fair, looking back, it seems a little too much that you get one medical director for the entire hospital, which in fairness is huge. Not to mention, because it's not clear whether he knows what his job description includes, Max turns a deaf ear to poor old Dora, who is reminding him of his actual duties. He runs around the hospital instead, making warm introductions with his colleagues, and on the first day fires the entire cardiovascular surgery department. Yep, on the first day on the job, and he does that. And at that moment, it felt somewhat acceptable because they were prioritizing money over patient care. Well, the show tries to be woke, so our next complaint about Max is genuinely absurd. He finds out that he has throat cancer in the first episode, and for some noble reason, he refuses to tell his pregnant and estranged wife about it for 6 episodes. For a show that has managed to fight just about every social issue, somehow they overlook healthy relationships and focus on how women might not be able to handle tough news. Aww. Max is a weird character, part 2. Most of our problems regarding the show stem from Max. So one of the most senior members of the hospital decides to delay his cancer treatment because he wants to continue his workaholic lifestyle. After all, Max believes he can save everyone. To be fair, we're convinced that he's terrible at his job. Once he finally does start treatment, he opts for an experimental treatment for cancer rather than opting for chemotherapy, which is more reliable. Again, all of this because he wants to run around the hospital. Max, the medical director of the entire hospital, decides to prioritize giving lectures to low-level insurance company phone operators rather than doing his job. Then, of course, he's on decent terms with some UN ambassadors, and as the medical director, he's probably closer to the board of directors as well, but no, he'd much rather sort it out by calling some random operator than by taking the more assertive and assured route. Somehow, what really makes us lose our mind is the fact that these efforts are actually successful. Talk about being realistic. Up next, monotonous use of music. While Max's character might be the biggest reason why the show shouldn't continue after the 4th season, we have to factor in the production and direction. Somehow, if you manage to miss it, we're here to remind you that every single episode had an emotional climax. And in every single episode, that emotional climax was announced by the same piano notes. The only good thing to come from those scenes was the exercise our eyes got, thanks to the constant eye rolling. Also, the jazz drumming that's included in just about every episode to indicate the monotony of everyday life in New Amsterdam only pushes us closer to the X on top of the screen. It's great how they've managed to butcher a pretty decent storyline that started with so much promise and reduce it to utter nonsense. Then we have the vaccine dilemma. We somehow stuck around for season 3, so at this point we don't blame the producers, but we blame ourselves. But partly because we really wanted to see how they deal with the COVID-19 issue. Oh, and it was wild. Again, after a pretty decent start to the 3rd season, we got back to Max doing his job in the most terrible way possible. Somehow Max manages to waste a whole batch of vaccines because he's looking for the people who deserve it rather than the ones who have turned up to get one. Well, that should have been terrible enough for him to get called out for his actions. Somehow the focus shifts and Max is now trying to fight racism and end it. It's also annoying how we're forced to accept that Max not consulting anyone before going out on a whim is actually good because he has good intentions. He believes that people won't listen and they'll criticize him, and that's probably the only sensible thing he actually comes up with. Max is hell-bent on increasing patient engagement, so he literally makes the life of his colleagues harder by removing the screens and also forces his doctors to decrease prescriptions of opiates. Nah, this just can't be real. It has to be satire. And now, twists and turns. Yes, a good story has plot twists and generally shock storylines. Everyone loves it. We do too. But at least there should be some sort of consistency in it. More often than not, it feels like there are two sets of writers on the show. Ones that are constantly trying to enforce woke values, and the other team that's concerned about the storyline of the hospital and cases. And somehow, it feels like there's an ongoing battle between the two and no one's winning. Dr. Reynolds moving to New York to take care of his mom while leaving behind his fiancée and then getting romantically involved with someone in an open marriage was bizarre enough. But no, they made it much more interesting when he finds out that he's working with the woman's husband. Then the way they just made Daniel Day Kim disappear from the show after portraying her as the golden example of work-life balance. And how can we ever forget that this forced woke show managed to start a relationship between Dr. Bloom and a homeless woman named Layla. The way Dr. Bloom invites her to stay at her place, and then they start living together, but somehow the power imbalance is okay because the gender is the same. Really? Not to mention how she uses her power in the hospital to hire Layla and give her a job. That will surely end well. It has to. Next, will they, won't they, and final dig at Dr. Max. The soap opera-esque will they, won't they gags quite old now. We refuse to believe anyone has the same reaction to these romantic to and fro instances as we did with Rachel and Ross. If the show wants to go down that road, then by all means, do so. But how does it go from being so trashy in one scene to so woke and attempting to engage the audience? Find a balance, please. Or maybe it's a genre that we just haven't seen enough of yet. Oh, and before we wrap it up, let us discuss one more instance of Max being Max. For some reason, in season 3, the show becomes a toxic workplace. Literally toxic. It was one, anyway, but this time it's due to a chemical waste rupture rather than Max. Fine, we're sorry. But you won't believe what he proceeds to do. Max, a doctor, runs off without any consultation and decides to find the leak. Upon finding it, he plugs it with his body to prevent a bigger spill, only to nearly die. We won't comment any further on that sequence, but we will just collectively hope that none of the doctors in the real world are anything like that. That's a wrap for this video. Do you have any questions about New Amsterdam and why it's a TV show? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.